Yo, what's good? What's happening, Rush Nation? We're back. Welcome to episode 70 of 5 Yard College. That intro is still really difficult for me to do. I'm still 5 yard rushing, but I'm definitely very much here, 5 Yard College involved. For those of you that are joining us Wednesday morning on the breakfast show, we're competing with Good Morning. I don't even know who does breakfast TV in England anymore, but we're out. It's 8 o'clock. If you're listening audio Tuesday night, welcome. If you're listening to the breakfast show, you can see there's 3 of us. There's me and there's no Ash, because once again, Ash has been unfortunately called away on business this week. He's had to go to Middle England to do something helicopter related, and he didn't get to fly there in a helicopter. He had to go by car. And for those of you who listen to the pod, you'll know that Ash is from the West Country down south. So that's quite a journey up to Middle England in a car. I don't envy him, but he's not here. And I thought, okay, Jord, veteran now of the college pod, he's coming on. And then a few weeks ago, Jack, our Big Ten writer, expressed an interest, but then his missus was out at a gig. He was on baby duty, couldn't make it. And the man that Jord is said, Jack, I can do this, but you step up, you have a go. And then I said, well, let's roll 3 ways. And here we are. I'm joined by Jack and Jord. Jord, welcome back, man. Thanks for stepping up. Decent T-shirt, nice hat game. How you doing, fella?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure. And I thought, obviously, like I said, I threw out to Jack because we've got 1, 2, 3 in the fantasy football, haven't we, in the college challenge? And I said off air that we don't need to talk about it. I'm the one who's brought it up straight away, aren't I?
So, I mean, we might as well peel back the curtain there. Jord didn't want to talk about it because I beat him in a narrow victory this week to continue his topple from the top. And you rightly bring up fantasy football because we've got possibly the best player in the showdown in total. Jack is the best college fantasy football player I've come across. And I basically stole the crown last year in the final, Jack. I would love to say I felt terrible about that, but I didn't. Welcome to 5 Yard College, man. How you doing? How you feeling?
Yeah, good. So excited to join, and I'd love to say that it's all skill on the fantasy side, but I basically steal John Lobb's work every week. Listen to his podcast, follow his stuff, but I've loved doing college fantasy football the last couple of years. Really excited to join you guys, and I thought with Ash away, you need somebody to drown out the Pac-12 chat from George. So, hopefully I'll do Ash proud.
Well, no doubt. The fact that you've even brought that up is already making Ash smile, I can tell. Jord, we talked Pac-12 when you were last on, and I thought we'd be talking more Pac-12 today, but it appears that the Big Ten is taking right over and the Pac-12 is swallowed up once again. No, we are definitely going to talk some Pac-12 today because there's some ramifications, shall we say, from the Pac-12 from last weekend and this weekend coming up. And I'm just going to throw it out there right now, Jord. How do you feel about BYU being represented in the Pac-12 final? It's not going to happen, but they should be because they've got the best Pac-12 conference record against anyone. 5 Pac-12 wins now. Surely they should be there in the championship game.
Well, yeah, if they were in the conference, they would be, wouldn't they? It's, every week they go up against a Pac-12 team. I'm thinking, oh, come on, just let's have one win. And I think they've got a couple. Like obviously they're going to have a winning record against Pac-12 anyway. I think they've got a couple more up on the schedule still. I'm sure they've definitely got Utah. And there might be another one if I can remember, but it could be 6-0 at the end against Pac-12, wouldn't they? Really?
And that's devastating. For an independent and a Pac-12 that's dotted around performance-wise, they've stood out. And I mean, I think it'd be nice to see if they faced Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. But we've got to get there first. Jack, we'll get to some Big Ten news in a little bit, but next week, this is obviously a midweek pod now. There's some huge matchups in the Big Ten coming up, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm struggling to put Michigan State as my game of the week just for my Ohio State bias, but I just can't wait. If you've read any of the previews or reviews, I've been going on about it for at least 3 weeks now with the potential of this undefeated clash. I'm really excited for that one. And looking at the slate today, there's every game in the Big Ten this coming week 9 is a coin flip game. You've got you haven't got any outright like runaway leaders in any of those matches, and
hold up. I think you're being a little bit unfanboy here. Surely Ohio State are going to blast Penn State's doors in.
Yeah, but we might have some Nittany Lion fans listening, and that's not. I don't want to distance myself from them.
So we're 5 minutes in, and we've already realised that Jack is Switzerland of 5 Yard College. That's where we're sitting with this. Right, boys, let's do some news. Let's start. I mean, this is old news now under the Nick Rolovich news, but his time in Washington State has come to an end, and as we expected, fired early last week. Although it might not be the end of the story, as his lawyer has come out to say the firing was unjust, unlawful, and they will be taking lead action against the school. I mean, the fact that Washington State is a state-run school when the state policy was that all state workers have to be vaccinated. You know, Jord, we talked about this. Surely this is done and dusted, right? And it's just a case of, unfortunately, you work for the state. Jord, what do you reckon?
Well, it's exactly that, and I just can't see. Like, obviously, his lawyer seems to think he might have a case, but I can't see. I'm not glued up on the religious side of it and what obviously you can like say that your reasons are for it, but if they're the rules of the state, they're the rules of the state. So I can't see how that stands up in court, to be honest with you. But hey ho, you know, we've seen weird things happen before. So, but I'd be very surprised if anything comes of this and he gets any compensation or anything like that.
Yeah, it would be an unusual outcome, I think, considering the statewide mandate. Jack, have you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Rolovich himself hasn't kind of put out any of the details. He didn't even want the news out that he was applying for a religious exemption that's come from elsewhere. So it's really interesting. He's kind of kept it private, but has been forced for it to be public because everyone's asking him about it. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't see anything happening with it, but yeah, it's sad to see, really, and almost out of everybody's control at the school.
Yeah, and the thing for me is it's not just, you know, Nick Rolovich has obviously been let go, but it's just the ramifications of the drip down effect on the coaches that have also left because of it. And you've got the players who are playing this year. You know, they played well against BYU, but didn't. Obviously, BYU were the better team on the day. And then you've got the commits for next year and the year after who potentially were thinking Washington State would be the school that Nick Rolovich is there and maybe he's the reason they're going. And now all of a sudden he's not there. Some of the coaching tree isn't there. Is there going to be a load of decommits, or were they there for the school, not the coach? I've heard a few people say that, you know, you got to go for the school, not the coach, because this exact thing could happen. So for some of these players, it could be an absolute game changer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you say, you do have to go for the school, not the coach, because this can happen. Your coach can get fired, or your coach can get another job elsewhere if they're doing really well. And you know, you're not tied to that coach. They can't necessarily take you with them. But having said that, that's not the way it works. Players do go for a coach. They go for the relationship they've built and the promises that have been made. So you hope that this doesn't affect Washington State too badly, but we just don't know what's going on in their heads. You've got to remember these players are just kids, really. They've got so much to consider, and their future is on the line.
Yeah, and it keeps harking back to the NIL deal. I mean, some of this stuff they could have had potentially in place for their next seasons in Washington State. For the NIL deal, and now that could be jeopardized as well because perhaps they may not be going, or they may not get the game time because Rolovich isn't there. There's so much that's trickled down from this, and it'll be interesting to see if anything else comes of it. But let's move on to the AAC have announced they're adding 6 former Conference USA schools. The schools joining are Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas Rice, UAB, and UTSA. The earliest this is likely to happen will be 2023, but a date is yet to be announced. Jord, what do you make of all of this?
I think we're just still seeing ripple effects, from obviously when Oklahoma and Texas are joining the SEC, and like obviously we'll get to news further on with the same ripple effects. I'm I'm not too sure where I stand on it. Like, obviously, it's a lot of teams in the conference now over there, so it could be good, it could be bad. I'm kind of like on the fence, I suppose, a bit. It'd be see what happens going forward, but like I said, it's people making moves. It would be interesting to see if these moves would have happened if obviously Oklahoma and Texas won't join the SEC. Would people still be making these moves, or is it because of what's happened going on and everyone's trying to look after themselves? Obviously with the talk early on in the season with Pac-12, Big 12 and AAC, like having that like unwritten contract saying that they'll play more games against each other. Everyone's just seemed to be reacting, and like I said, obviously there's more news further on with another conference that seemed to have snapped up some more teams.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the whole thing is one giant Jenga piece, and as soon as one bit moves, everything else rotates to fit back into place almost. And Jack, we might as well move on to the Conference USA news. They're also losing Southern Miss, who are joining the Sun Belt in 2023. Old Dominion and Marshall, as well as an FCS school, James Madison, have also been invited to join the Sun Belt. With all the leavers and potential leaves of Conference USA, they're in disarray. Only 5 programs remaining. Surely this could well be it for Conference USA.
Yeah, it really could be, and it's a classic case of follow the money. I think the Sun Belt has always been a lot of fun, and it's gained a lot of attention in the last couple of years. The Sun Belt is the fun belt, and you can't blame teams for wanting to join it. And I think Conference USA, this isn't the first time teams have left, but this could be the final time. Yeah.
It would be a shame. It would be a shame to lose Conference USA as a total, but I think you're right. People follow the money, and when something opens up, as if the Big 12 losing 2 of the best teams to the SEC, money moves around there because money follows the names, and it's all a huge waterfall effect. And let's I don't think we've seen the end of this whole maneuvering situation either. I think there's more to come as well, which would be interesting to say the least in a perhaps cold and dark off-season moment that we may well get it in. Right, as I threw the show doc out to the chaps, Jord immediately came back and said, we've got to talk Penn State overtime. We were definitely going to talk it anyway, but Jord wanted it in the show doc. I suppose we should go to our Big Ten guy, Jack. The Penn State lost in overtime to Illinois, and I think it was at the 9th overtime, something like that. It was ridiculous. I think we'll get to Jordan in a minute because he's obviously frustrated. You can see it in his face on the video. I wasn't a massive fan of it because not only was it single plays from the 2-yard line, I don't know why Illinois didn't run the football when they had absolutely gashed Penn State for the whole game. It didn't need to go that many overtimes. Illinois could have won it. The first, 10? There wasn't a score. They were all failed attempts. And the fact that they moved up and down the field to swap end zones to do it just made the whole thing laborious. Jack, am I on the right line here, or am I well wrong?
No, you absolutely are. It's a privilege to have college football on mainstream TV in the UK, but it really didn't feel like it watching this game. And that's not just the overtime. The whole game was rather challenging to keep paying attention to. But these overtime rules came in to shorten the game and try and avoid some serious injuries that have occurred in overtime, in long overtime games. And we got a couple of, I don't know the seriousness of the injuries, but a couple of key players got injured, and the game just lasted forever. And you're right. Chase Brown was having another career day, and then Illinois just went away from him, and it made no sense to me. I just wanted him to run it in and end the misery that we were all enduring. And it's frustrating because we should be talking about a great result for Illinois. I mean, beating a ranked Penn State team in a year where the Fighting Illinois have they've been pretty dire since week 0, and they've got a massive result, but no one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about overtime and
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing I watched, funnily enough, I was working Sunday and I had a stupid early start, so I didn't catch the overtime until Pitsy put in the group chat that the overtime was they were having some sort of penalty shootout. So I had to flick it back on because I thought, what am I missing? And it turns out I wasn't really missing anything, and I should have stayed in bed. But what it did was, for this weekend, we all knew that Ohio State were gonna beat Penn State. But all it said to me that whole game was, just give Trevor Henderson the ball and watch him decimate Penn State. That's all they got to do. Surely that is all Ohio State have got to do. We'll get to that in a bit. Jord, I've let you sit there long enough. Talk me through it, mate. What was wrong with it?
First of all, I think, like I will say, Jack's spot on. That's why they brought it in, obviously, to stop the injuries, not stop it dragging out and stuff, which is it's a fair reason to bring it in. But, and like you said, Stocks, why are they going to each end? You know, before I start, I'm a calm guy. I'm a really calm guy. It really infuriated me. Why are they going over to each end? You know, like back and forth. That killed the time. And it's just, I'd rather watch go for 55-yard field goals attempts constantly. At least one of them's probably going to go in. But this was just so tedious and just like I said, there were two things that probably made it worse for me. First off, they weren't even scoring, so it wasn't exciting in that way. It was just failed attempt after fail attempt after fail attempt.
Yep.
Walking up to the other side, failed attempt. And the other thing was, you know, I love me Pac-12. Oregon, UCLA were on at 8:30. I couldn't find it anywhere else, so I had to miss a quarter of that watching these two. That probably made it a lot worse than it was as well, having to miss a quarter of like my Pac-12 conference. So that didn't help, and I was just on the couch muttering to my wife how why can't one of them score? This is terrible. Like, I'll stop now before I go on and spoil the show. But yeah,
No, you know, this is why we're here. We're spitballing three ways. I mean, I think a better thing to watch would be to see field goals from an ascending distance based on your kicking ability as a player. So you have like linemen taking 10-yard ones and then moving back, because that would be over quickly, because you just have miss until your kicker's made it and someone fluked one. That would be, you'd have punters perhaps making one. Or you do, I think I'm right in saying that the high school rules are you both get 4 plays from the 10-yard line and field goals count. So you both get a go at it, and the team with the most points after the two takes it away, and it's 2 series and that's it, done. I think that's probably a more realistic option that could be done, but we'll wait and see. There's been some recruitment news, boys. How have your recruiting glasses looked upon the season so far, or is this going to be short, sharp, and sweet?
I think I'm obviously Jack might know more than me, but I leave this stuff up to Ash. Ash is number one. I'll just wait until they come into college and watch them from there. Ash is number one when it comes to recruiting at high school.
Yeah, he's Jack. Have you any idea on this, or is this Ash's territory and he's thrown this in as a curveball?
Well, it's definitely Ash's territory, but one of the names is Zach Rice, and personally, very very sad to see him not commit to the Buckeyes. Very good recruit for North Carolina, but yeah, beyond the Buckeyes, my recruiting knowledge is stretched in. I stretch my sporting realms across very many sports and very many teams. I think diving into recruiting high school athletes is well, I wouldn't have time for anything else, and my wife would not be happy.
Yeah, I feel you. So, Ash, thanks very much, mate. Appreciate this. This is going to be a headline moment. We might as well start with Zach Rice, as Jack mentioned him. 2022 number 13 overall recruit and third-ranked offensive tackle Zach Rice has committed to North Carolina, as Jack said, over the likes of Bama, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Rice is the first 5-star recruit to UNC for this class, but they do have 8 4-star recruits already committed for 2022. Let's go to the first one. Jack threw me over there by moving the order. Cheers, mate. 2022 number 1 wide receiver Luther Burden has picked Missouri as his new school after decommitting from Oklahoma in August. Before we move on, do you think he would have stayed committed to Oklahoma had Caleb Williams been the starter?
I'm not sure. Like, obviously, like you've put there, and he's committed to his hometown. Like, I'm not sure the reasons and stuff. If that's the reason, fantastic for Missouri. But I've seen quite a bit of Missouri this year, and it's going to take a lot for than a number one wide receiver to help them, to be honest with you. But fantastic for them, yeah.
Yeah, as Jord said, he is staying in Missouri. He becomes only the 4th 5-star recruit to join Missouri in the modern recruiting era. So this is how much of a coup it is for Missouri. The previous 3 were Sheldon Richardson, Dorial Green Beckham, and Terry Beckner Jr. And then finally, 2022 4-star defensive tackle Bear Alexander. That is a great name for a defensive tackle. Bear Alexander has decided to stick with Georgia. After all, Alexander decommitted from the Bulldogs earlier this year and visited Texas A&M, Bama, and Miami before recommitting to the Bulldogs because he has seen that Georgia are a NFL-level defensive team. So why not go and play for the best team? Right. Let's run through some AP rankings quickly. Normally, we go back to front 5 each. Let's do that anyway. I'm going to start 25 BYU, 24 Coastal Carolina, UTSA 8-0 at 23 feels slightly harsh considering they have won all 8 games yet to have a bye. Iowa State at 22 and San Diego State at 21, moving up a place. Iowa State are in and BYU are in after not being in last week. Boys, Jord, start with you. Any of those 5 you feel should be there, should be higher, should be lower?
No, well, there's just one point that I could touch on with them. Iowa State have done well just to bounce back after a bad start early on. You didn't think they'd be able to get back in there and claw their way back in, but they've had some good wins. Obviously, the win over unbeaten Oklahoma State, I think it was this weekend, wasn't it? Yep. And that's probably propelled them back in. But BYU, I think they've given the 25 for, like you said, aren't they, for beating all the Pac-12 opposition? Good Pac-12 opposition, a couple of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on then, George. You can take the next 5.
So at number 20, we've got Penn State, 19 SMU, stay unbeaten, 18 Auburn, 17 we've got Pitt, who had a good win against. Well, I say a good win against Clemson. I think anyone can beat Clemson at the moment. 16 we've got Baylor. 6-1 who are having a good season.
Yeah. Jack, any of those 5 you feel should be in, around, or anywhere else?
I'm liking Baylor at 16, maybe a couple of spots higher they could be, but you know they're on a bye, so you suffer when you're on a bye, don't you? Mm-hmm. I was just going to say with UTSA at 23, I love the Roadrunners there. Again, could be higher up the rankings. I'm really worried that they're going to suffer from a bye week this week and be bounced straight back out of the rankings. But they're definitely one to watch. If anyone caught their game against Western Kentucky a couple of weeks ago, if you didn't, go and watch it. It was fantastic to watch.
I think their next game after the bye is against UTEP, right? Who have only lost one as well. So
yeah,
that would be some game. Obviously, Tanner Mordecai, my man, still smashing it with SMU. Their schedule is pretty soft until they get a huge match up with Cincinnati in a couple of weeks. So that could be a massive game for both teams. We just doing the counting here. You got to Baylor. Oklahoma State are at 15. Texas A&M are at 14. Wake Forest still undefeated at 13. And Kentucky at 12. And then I guess I'm doing Notre Dame at 11 as well. That makes 5. I got lost. Apologies. I want to talk about Wake Forest being at 13, 7-0, undefeated. Massive game against Army. Army pushed them all the way, basically, until the fourth quarter, where they stretched out to a 2-possession lead. Do we think that Wake should be above Kentucky? Although Kentucky have got some big wins, at what point does a big win become bigger than an undefeated number, Jack?
Well, that's tough. Maybe in 1 or 2 more games for Wake Forest. They've got they certainly looked impressive. They won. Well, I can't believe Army scored as many points as they did, to be honest. But Wake Forest won in a new way, without the ball for much of the game, which you expect against Army, but not quite to this extent. Kentucky have played and lost to the best team in college football right now. I think you can allow them to be up there for a bit longer. There's some more teams further up that have a loss that are still above, undefeated teams, and I think a loss to Georgia comes with an asterisk as a loss, in my opinion, at the moment.
Like a half loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jord, I mean, you mentioned earlier beating Clemson. All you have to do to beat Clemson is score more than 20 points. They haven't scored more than 20 points in regulation this season. Doesn't look like they're going to do it for the rest of the season either, unless something severe changes. That's how you beat Clemson. I mentioned it in the ACC preview last week. People were writing Pitt off, and I don't know how you write Pitt off with Kenny Pickett at the moment. The way he's throwing the football, he can score 3 touchdowns, and they scored enough points to beat Clemson. I say it's that simple, because their defense is still outstandingly good. But if you're playing as well as Kenny Pickett did, then yeah, that's how you beat Clemson. Jord, the next 5, if you will.
So we've got number 10. Oh, yeah, I think I've started 10, doing it. Ole Miss at 10, 9 Iowa, 8 Michigan State, still unbeaten, surprisingly for me personally. 7, got one of my only Pac-12 representatives still staying up there, 6-1 Oregon, and obviously the other Michigan, Harbaugh's Michigan, 7-0 at number 6.
So this is the point where we should let the Pac-12 have its moment in the sun before we annihilate it with the 2 Big Ten teams around it. Jord, Oregon at 7. Fair, unfair, just. Good win against UCLA. They went in as underdogs, which surprised me somewhat, considering they were Oregon. Although UCLA have been playing well. Where do you stand on Oregon at 7 right now?
I think, like obviously, like some people might say it's biased, but I think it's fair. Like obviously, you've got Michigan State up there at 7-0 that you could argue above them, but Oregon have still got a win over Ohio State. I know Ohio State have come back, and if they played each other now, it might be a different story. But on stats, they've got the win over Ohio State, haven't they? And so for me, that the loss against Stanford has obviously pushed them down. You could argue that could push them down further, but Stanford aren't a bad team. They're one of the good Pac-12 teams. So yeah, it might be might being a bit biased, but I think it's fair. The only argument maybe is to have Michigan State over them, but yeah, I think it's fair. But it's just touching on the rankings. I think I said last time I was on, I'm still like, obviously everyone, it's different opinions in it, I suppose. But like, look, Texas A&M at 14, they've got 2 losses on the year, but obviously that massive win against Alabama has propelled them up. So it's like you were mentioning with Jack Hat, where do we stand on the big wins and the big losses? It's for me, like it's a big win against Alabama, but I'd still have Texas A&M probably a bit further down, like below Baylor and Pitt and things like that. Me just can always have one of them wins. Alabama are the same team as we thought they would have been at the start of the season to it as well.
Before we unleash you on the Big Ten, Jack, do we think? My train of thought, Jack. Go Big Ten. I've lost my thought.
That's fine. I think on the Oregon ranking, I think they can feel a bit hard done by in the fact that they're lower than Ohio State based on that head-to-head. But it goes to show, if you're going to lose early, lose in the first 2-3 weeks, because the AP poll shows that people will see you improve, and that's what people want to see. Like you say, Stanford are not a bad team, and Ohio State at the beginning of the season were a bad. Well, they weren't a bad team, but Oregon deserved their win, but Ohio State weren't playing well, and so yeah, I wouldn't drop Oregon yet. I think Michigan State have they have a tough run in. We're going to see how good Michigan State really are, and I'm really excited for them, and it's great to see them back to national prominence. It's been a while. They've always been in the shadows nationally, but in the Big Ten as well. I mean, even in their own state, they play second fiddle to Michigan, don't they? And I can't wax lyrical enough about Kenneth Walker and this Spartans running game. He made school history. He's breaking school records with longest play in school history. Is really showing that his transfer was the right decision. And conversely, Wake Forest aren't suffering either. So it looks like both schools are benefiting from that transfer.
Absolutely win-win. I've remembered what I was going to say. With this AP rankings and stuff, obviously the playoff rankings are out in a couple of weeks, 1 or 2 more weeks' time. Do these AP rankings, are they just sort of bit of show at the moment, really, until the playoff rankings come out? Or are they more important than I'm making out, Jack?
Ooh. Well, we'll see on that first playoff rankings. I think teams like Michigan State and Michigan and Cincinnati, who will come on to, they need these AP polls. They need the recognition now because of strength of schedule in Cincinnati's case, and probably Michigan State, and maybe style points when it comes to Michigan. So I think they are a lot of, it's all we've got to talk about. So that's why they are important, and we love them until the playoff rankings come out, and then they just get forgotten about, and we don't really listen to what other coaches have to say about the rankings.
Yeah, and you were right about when you said lose early, because obviously the teams who started in the AP rankings at the start of the season, they get that added shine to their sort of look when they lose one, or they bounce back from the losses, like Ohio State have done. So, their early preseason ranking has been really well, I guess, not adjusted, but has shined nicely on them when they did get that loss to Oregon. And then, they've absolutely turned the Jets on and are just smoking people. I saw a picture of their wide receiver bench being talked, and it's like just 5 stars. I think there's 4 5-stars and a 4-star in their wide receiver bench at the moment. You think it's just, how's that fair? How do you? And then you add in Traven Henderson as well, and it's like, this is, try and stop this lot at your peril. And their defense has got better as well. I mean, Jack, run us through the final 5, and then we can talk some Buckeyes. Yeah,
so at 5 you've got Ohio State. Just above them, Oklahoma at 4, still unbeaten, looking better in the last few weeks. Alabama slipped back up to 3rd with Cincinnati at 2, and the formidable Georgia at number 1.
I like how you said slipped back up to 3rd there. Can you slip uphill? I mean, it's very difficult to do, but they have done exactly that. They're back at 3. With Cincinnati's, I guess, dull win at the weekend, that's done their playoff rankings, playoff poll rankings, should we say, in a couple of weeks' time. No favors at all, has it? Because of they needed to annihilate the rest of the competition for the year coming, and that SMU game is now going to be, if SMU keep winning, that Cincinnati SMU game is going to be huge for them for the playoff rankings.
Yeah. I think if you're a group of 5 team and you want to be, you have playoff aspirations, you can't give people reasons to question you. And unfortunately, that's what this game against Navy has done. People are questioning how good Cincinnati are. Now, like you say, they've got a game against SMU to really show what they're about, and they could put that right in their very next game. They could blow out, I'm not sure who they've got up next, but they could absolutely blow out their next opponent, and this will be forgotten. But I think the neutral fans all want Cincinnati to win and do well and be in the playoffs. I'm assuming that's how I feel. I think it's a very British thing to want the underdog.
I think you're right in the fact that, but I don't think it's just neutral fans. I think it is college football fans as a whole would like to see some sort of shake-up with Cincy making the playoffs. I think it would do wonders for the sport, and it would also, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, do everybody who is essentially chasing money the world of good when it comes to exposure and stuff in the college playoffs. So as the money is moving around, if you can be a group of 5 team and get into the playoffs, especially if there's an expansion, then it's only good things the whole way round. So if Cincy do win out, and they do win out well, and they get left out, I genuinely think there could be some form of rioting somewhere in the football landscape, because it would just be bananas. It would absolutely be bananas. And then you mentioned, Jack, that Oklahoma have looked better, but then they really struggled this week in the first half, and Caleb Williams, it took a monumental stripping of Kennedy Brooks for them to get the job done. So
it did. And I think for Cincinnati to miss out, if Cincinnati win out, it will take Oklahoma going unbeaten and Ohio State remaining unbeaten from here on in, for them to miss out, and that would be a shame, and it would be tough to take. But yes, Oklahoma. Okay, yeah, maybe I should correct my previous statement. They looked good against Texas in the second half, and then Caleb Williams is a lot of fun, and he's got fans interested again and on board. A bit of controversy around his rip of the ball play. Was Kennedy Brooks stopped? Should the player be called off? But
no, it was fine. It counted. Sorry, Jord.
No, I was just saying, as an interesting fact for the Cincinnati and Oklahoma game this weekend, I think they were about on the spread. I think they were like 70 points, like favoured, like joined together. And I think they ended up winning by about 18 points, like between them both. So if you were covering with them two, obviously you wouldn't have won any ACCAs this weekend.
Yeah, but Oklahoma covering have been absolutely dreadful this year. Absolutely dreadful. Here's a question then, talking on the rankings. You said what about if Michigan stay unbeaten and they beat Ohio State, Penn State, and they've got the Michigan State Spartans this weekend? Do you think they push Cincy out if they stay unbeaten?
I think it's how Cincinnati win from here on and out. They've got to, like you mentioned the SMU game, that's a big game, but they've got to win impressively. I think, like for things, if to not worry about things behind them. If they win impressively in all the games, I don't think they have to worry what's behind them, and I think they'll be in. But if they're winning games like they did this weekend, then obviously, like you mentioned, Michigan win out, if Oklahoma win out, if Ohio State, like I'm not sure, like if they, like you said, probably play each other, but even the teams behind, if Oregon like win out impressively, these are the things you can't. I suppose you can't worry what's going on behind you. All Cincinnati have to do is if they win impressively, and surely, like you said, there would be riots if they don't get in, if they're winning out, and especially if they beat a good SMU team as well comfortably.
I think for me, you're right in the fact that since you need to win out big, but I think that the win against Navy, what was it, 27-10? I mean, it's not a huge win, but it's a couple of scores and a kick. It's not as bad as it could have been, and I think this was a game that Desmond Ridder and the head coach's name has escaped me right now. Thanks, boys. Thanks for jumping in. The Cincinnati head coach there, you've got me.
We're all blanking.
I think the way Cincinnati are portraying themselves as a football team this season is we are consummate professionals and we are going about this the way that we want to, but the way that is best for the school. And I think perhaps that Navy game was a shock. And then in Cincinnati's next game, again, Jack, I don't know their schedule either. Whoever they face, they may get absolutely shredded by a Bearcats team that wants to come back. And now they know they have to win the rest of their games, and they have to win them by a significant margin. So it could be a case that it could be
just jumping in, Tulane they've got this weekend.
Yeah, so we could well see Cincinnati slam Tulane, and then I think it's week 9 they play SMU, Jord, right? If that's in front of you.
No, but I'll find out.
This is, as you can tell, we are like the Cincinnati of the podcast world, consummate professionals all the way through Rush Nation. Right, that's the AP rankings done. Where do we see anybody before we move on, Jack? Do we see anyone beating Georgia? I know Jord and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and they're just the best team in college football right now. When the final deal's done and the playoffs are set, do you think there's a team that could get into the playoffs that could challenge Georgia, or is this Georgia's to lose?
I think both of those can be true. It's definitely Georgia's to lose at this stage. They've given up 4 touchdowns in total on the season, and they do look formidable. I definitely don't see them losing any of the rest of their regular season games. You've got the SEC championship game. If that's up against Alabama, you back Nick Saban to at least test that Georgia defense, and the offense is definitely Alabama's strength. As a Buckeye fan, I'm going to say that our offense can test them too. I think Georgia are the opposite of the other big teams in that they are led by their defense and their offense does enough. The rest of the big teams, they're led by their offense and their defense does enough. So that's the kind of game that I want to watch. I want to watch Georgia's defense against Alabama's offense, against Ohio State's offense, and the other way around. I want to see, strength against strength and weakness against weakness. I think those make for great games in the playoffs. But Georgia are number one. Georgia are the best team in football right now. It would be an upset for one of the other teams to knock them off. Not that can't happen, but I wouldn't be expecting it.
Yeah, I think the week one game against... The thing with Georgia for me is that we haven't had to see their offense decide or need to light it up yet. Their defense has controlled the game so well, whereas Alabama, we've had to see what their offense can do for them to get back into games. Like against Tennessee, they needed that fourth quarter, otherwise they were in trouble against the Vols, whereas we haven't seen Georgia's offense yet. So whilst Georgia's defense, yes, is elite, Georgia's offense could be a little bit better than we're expecting as well. So if Jordan needs to turn up and play both halves, we can expect that from him. But if Georgia do as well, it could be something else that we happen to see in the playoffs if a team challenges their defense and asks them to do stuff with the football. Because as you mentioned, the rest of them are predicated on offense, not defense. So if Georgia's offense can do stuff as well, it could be lights out football. Right, boys, let's talk some quick results from our respective divisions. Jord, we won't make you cover the SEC unless you want to dive into anything respective there. Let's talk some Big 12. No, Pac-12. Sorry, Pac-12. Forgot you were here for a second. Are there any of the results from the Pac-12 that you want to talk about specifically this week before we get to schedule for next week?
I think obviously the big game, obviously the one that I put as the game of the week, the Oregon UCLA game, was obviously Oregon got a big win. There it was to keep any kind of playoff aspirations, alive. Obviously, it's still highly unlikely and stuff. Obviously, they need things to fall their way, but it keeps them alive for going forward. But I don't know, if you get a chance to go watch the highlights of this game, the highlights are just brilliant as well. I don't know if any of you guys saw it. The fourth quarter was insane. It was just, this is what I love about the Pac-12. I understand the Pac-12 football, the conference is not the best Power 5. You get entertainment week in, week out. And and that was just thinking exactly like it. I think Oregon were up by 17. The UCLA scored a touchdown. Oregon quarterback got intercepted. UCLA scored a touchdown. Oregon quarterback got intercepted. UCLA quarterback got intercepted. Game over. That was the fourth quarter. At the end of it, it was manic. And just a special mention. I'm going to gloss over Washington because somehow they just managed to beat Arizona.
I was gonna bring that up if you didn't. Weren't Washington like 16-0 down at halftime?
13-0.
13-0 down at halftime. Yeah, I almost messaged you and then thought, no, I shouldn't rub salt in that wound. That would be unfair.
I didn't stay up for it. I caught it in the morning. I watched it repeat on ESPN, but yeah, I ain't got enough time to go into Washington and Jimmy Lake at the moment and stuff. We'd have to have a special episode just for that. But so we'll gloss over that. And just a special mention for Oregon State, who technically have still got a chance of the Pac-12 North Championship. Obviously the one win behind Oregon, both got one loss in the conference. So if both of them win out, it'll come down to the last game of the season, which would be Oregon State. So obviously a lot of things have to go right for that, but it potentially could be a great game at the end if everything goes the way. They're playing some good football, Oregon State at the moment.
So that's that's not the Civil War. That's Utah, isn't it? Civil War. What's the Oregon State game called?
You've got me here now, and I'm meant to be a Pac-12 champ.
Jord. Yeah, no, I think it's Utah. BYU is the Holy War, which I'm not sure they're allowed to call that anymore. Maybe it's a Civil War. Something like that. Come on, Jord, type faster. Rescue me here. Gosh.
I've got it as the Oregon Classic or the state championship game or the Civil War.
Civil War. They're not They've changed that name now. They've changed that name for obvious reasons. Yeah, the Beavs look good. They look good. That we're going to call it the Civil War because we can and we're allowed to. The Civil War game at the end of the season, that could be electric with those uniforms on the last game of the season. So that could be something to look forward to. Jack, let's talk some Big Ten. Jord, get ready because I'm going to ask you for some Pac-12 insight to Week 9. Jack, Big Ten, anything? Obviously, we've mentioned the Penn State ridiculousness of the overtime loss to Illinois. Anything else from the rest of the Big Ten you want to mention from Week 8?
Yeah, Big Ten teams can run the ball. You look at the fixtures this week, and you can just look at the winners, and you can confirm to yourself that they ran the ball really well on Saturday. Minnesota had their 4th and 5th 100-yard rushes of the season. They can survive multiple massive injuries at running back in Ibrahim and Potts going down, and they're still okay. And they're actually, I think they're tied for first place in the West after starting with a loss to Ohio State and things looking a bit down. They're on the up, so good on the Golden Gophers. And if any team needed to get back to basics, it was Wisconsin. And they absolutely did. They completed 5 passes this week. 5. Which is probably exactly what Graham Mertz needs, because he's been throwing picks left, right, and centre. And he just let Braylon Allen and Shea Malusi take over. And they beat Purdue. Obviously, Purdue were ranked for the first time in a while, and it's a shame that they've dropped right out of the rankings because of that. But this wasn't an upset. This was a good matchup, and Wisconsin, got back to what they do best, and they ran the ball, and they bullied Purdue on offense. Yeah,
you mentioned it in your review this week as well, how it was basically business as usual for the teams that run the football. We are going to come back to you in a minute, Jack, for some Big Ten chat regarding Week 9. Jord, do you need me to run through the ACC, or are you ready for some Pac-12 Week 9 chat?
I'm ready for some Pac.
No, I don't.
Run through the ACC. I don't want to take all the.
No, look, listen. Apart from Pitt, the ACC is dreadful this year. We don't need to talk about it at all. If you are interested in ACC, the review will be up on the website, hopefully tomorrow morning. Apologies if you are an ACC fan. I have missed a couple of weeks, but these 5-yard college writers are keeping me on my toes, Rush Nation. They're keeping me busy, which I am enjoying. But the ACC review will be back this week. Jord, don't want to take up any more Pac-12 time. Let's do it. Where are you looking at this week for the Pac-12?
Before I jump into Pac-12, there is one thing on ACC that I did find out this week that I didn't actually know. I don't know if any of you guys know. Obviously, the big loads of talk about Kenny Pickett at the moment. Obviously, I don't really follow much ACC because there's that much college football. It's so hard to follow every conference. But apparently, he wears 2 pairs of gloves because his hands are so small. I don't know if anyone knows that.
No, he doesn't.
Honestly, that's what I've heard on a fellow podcast. I think it was Cover 2. I think it was. He wears 2 gloves because his hands are small.
On both hands?
On his throwing hand.
Oh, don't tell the NFL scouts that.
That's a death nail. That is absolutely Kenny Pickett done.
Well, that's what I heard on this podcast.
How big are these gloves? Like, what's he wearing? Like the foam ones or something?
I'm sure people in the comments when this comes out can let us know if it's true or not. But I just thought I'd throw it out there because I've never heard that before. So I thought it was quite interesting because he's playing some good football apparently as well. But I just thought I'd throw it out there just before I move on to Pac-12.
That is it. That's blown my mind. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I cannot believe. How do you get any touch for wearing 2 gloves?
Well, I'm sure you'll let us know, Stocks, if it is true. But it's a respected pod that brought it up. So unless they really, it's not April the 1st, is it? So
NFL balls are bigger as well. This is arrow down for Kenny Pickett. I will, on the ACC, just mention that the Wake Forest Army game, which finished 70-56, was the 2nd highest score in ACC history ever, behind a game in 2019. I think it's in the review. It's coming. Okay, Jord, Pac-12, hit me.
So looking at this week's schedule, the big game I think I'll probably put in my spoilers. Sorry for the game of the week. It's probably going to be UCLA Utah because it's a must win for both. Obviously they're both just behind Arizona State. Arizona State have got Washington State, who obviously we mentioned Wolovich going. He got them on a good run, and obviously left and lucky against BYU. BYU probably ended up deserving the win, but it were a close fought game. So obviously that's not guaranteed Arizona State are going to win, but obviously just say they do. UCLA need the win more, but Utah still need the win as well, because obviously they can find themselves a couple of wins behind Arizona State going into the last few games of the season. So it's a big game for both. And obviously Oregon have got I've got to mention them because obviously they're number 7 ranked. They've got I'll be very surprised. Obviously, I'm probably going to eat my words if you're going to put it all over Twitter if this goes against it. But I'll be very surprised if Colorado get a win against Oregon, because, as I mentioned in my Week 8 review, Colorado managed 3 offensive yards in the second half against Cal and about 102 in the first half. So I can't see them moving the ball much on Oregon, and they should be able to go and get another win this weekend. And obviously USC have got should be a nice win against Arizona, because they've struggled this year. But can Arizona upset the odds? Obviously USC have had a torrid time this year. Can Arizona get that win? Can they get that win? They're looking for it. I think it's 18 games now. Can they get the win? Probably not, but I really hope they do.
There's some passionate Pac-12 chat there, Jack. You can shut that right down with some Big Ten stuff.
Yeah, I think there's 2 big games that we're looking forward to. There's one game that I'm going to have to write up, but I'm not going to suggest you watch. If you want to watch offensive football, do not tune in to Iowa with Wisconsin, because neither team can move the ball in the air at all. And I mean, it'll be fascinating to watch to see if Iowa can overcome Wisconsin and that defense. But yeah, I wouldn't tune into it. Catch the highlights of that one. You want to focus your time. You got it's a big. I think it's the Fox's big noon kickoff. Is Michigan State hosting Michigan, and it's gonna mean so much. I think. Michigan State have all the highlight wins in recent times. I think everyone remembers the last second blocked, or not even a blocked punt that somehow turned into a Michigan State touchdown. I think that was 2007. It was one of my earliest college football memories of joy as an Ohio State fan. And it'll be interesting to see how Michigan State measure up against Michigan. Michigan's running game is as, if not more, impressive than Michigan State's. Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum are a lethal 1-2 punch. Their statistics for this season are off the charts. Michigan are known for running the ball, and they're known for playing good defense. So it'll be interesting to see how the 2 sides match up. If the Spartans can limit some of that running game and force Cade McNamara or even JJ McCarthy to throw the ball, then I think Michigan State's defense will be in a really good position to slow that down and maybe force some picks, because Michigan Wolverines haven't shown anything through the air. It's been lots of short passes, and they've been able to rely on that run game. So I don't know if Michigan State can force them to go away from that, but it'll be a brilliant game, and it's nice UK time, 5:00 tea time game, and then make sure you're setting your alarms and staying up for Ohio State, Penn State. I want to build it up as a closer game. On paper, it, as you say, it's not. Ohio State are looking really, really good in the last couple of weeks. Penn State don't look like they can defend the run particularly well. And when you've got Trevion Henderson, he's been a revelation since he came in. I mean, he's a true freshman. He is on course to break Ohio State's true freshman record. I've put in my review this week, I've mentioned him in the same breath as Dobbins and Elliott and Archie Griffin. Not saying he is that player yet, but that's the kind of excitement levels around this guy. And you know, if that's not working, well, CJ Stroud can just toss the ball up to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba. You know, even Jeremy Ruckert got 2 touchdowns in the last game. It's a lethal offense. The thing I will say about Penn State is their defense is obviously their strength, and they could cause some problems. And this is a rivalry game of sorts. This is there is no love lost between these two teams, and you never know what could happen on any given Saturday.
Any given Saturday. Nicely done, sir. Well, I'm gonna press you here for two things. One is going to be a nice segue into our final section, Jord. So unfortunately, we do have time to talk some showdown. So if you could get that up in front of you, because I can't right now, that would be great for you to run through us results and stuff. But first of all, Jack, the Michigan game. Who do you think is going to win that one? Where would you, as a neutral? I guess it's difficult to say neutral considering you are a Buckeyes fan, but as a neutral of that game, who do you think is going to win? And when it comes down to it,
I think at the end of the day, that running back duo that the Wolverines have will be enough for them to get the win over Michigan State. And the Spartans' defense isn't quite as good as it has been in the last few years. They're fun, but not quite as good on the ground. So if I was going to tip my hat one way, I'd go with the Wolverines because of that ground game.
Marvelous. That's good news. How much work do you think Hassan Haskins is going to get? And I guess the next question to that is, do you think he's a viable starter in the showdown this week?
He's going to get a lot of work. Him and Coram are splitting carries pretty evenly, but they're both getting a lot. I think they're both north of 17 attempts each game, 17 carries per game. And you just have to look at how many points they're racking up in fantasy to check that out. I've got Coram on a Campus to Canton league, and he's pretty much my only bright spark in that right now, because I took DJ at number 1. So that's turned sour, but I picked up Coram off the waiver wire. So, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, no. Talking of waiver wire, can you believe Hassan Haskins was available on the waiver wire in the showdown? How has he's been there for weeks, and I haven't had space to add him, and I thought, I'm going to add him this week. Someone else will add him. Nobody added him. I managed to get one of those 2 running backs on my roster as well, which I'm thoroughly pleased with. Jord, let's talk some showdown. How'd it go this week?
Can I just mention there's a really big game in the Mountain West as well if you knock it down at 2:30 on Saturday. I got my second loss, didn't I? And we know where it came from. We know where it came from, don't we, Stocks?
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was... to be fair, I thought it was going to be closer when the Sooners were in a bit of bother in the first half. I thought the pairing of Caleb Williams and Kennedy Brooks was going to cause me issues, and it was going to. You've been scoring well, and we mentioned it when you came on last time that this was going to be a huge clash, and after that, Tom beat me, so it wasn't as big a deal as possible as it could have been. And you were playing Jack that week, and you only had one player because you had 1,000 buys, and it was. Yeah, Jack took a loss this week as well. This isn't me rubbing it in. I'm just really mentioning that Jack. Is that your first loss, Jack?
Yeah, first one.
Yeah, first one. How many did you lose last year? Not. I'm not. Apart from the final, how many in the regular season did you lose last year? G.
Just 1 or 2, I think, last year.
So he's got form, ladies and gentlemen. Jack has regular season form of losing only a couple. Jord, the results this week and the standings, if you will, sir.
So what would you like first? Would you like the standings? I'm guessing you'd like the results first, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think results first. Let's build some tension.
So obviously we'll get that out of the way first. Obviously I finished with 176.9 and obviously Stocks 192.75.
I would just like to point out as well, I left Kyron Williams on the bench who scored 30 points.
Obviously, I just like to say I had quite a lot of injuries as well, and more wins. I think you raced off to a really good lead, didn't you? Early on, your 2 quarterbacks. Obviously, I think one played Thursday night, and
Tanner Mordecai played Thursday night, and
raced off to a big lead. And I cut it back a bit, and it was just. I don't think any of our late players scored well late on, and it just stayed as it is really. So, yeah, it's. Like you said, it's not it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I'm feeling that right now. I need to get back to them legs churning and try and get some more wins. And there was a low-scoring game between Murph had 77, and he took the win against Shane with 72.
Wow!
So that's an incredible win for Murph.
Well played, Murph. There, when I looked at his team, he's having a torrid time. The poor chap Murph is with players and stuff being out. We mentioned it last week, but yeah, not fun for him right now.
Ash suffered another loss. He finished on 1-2-2, and Connor 1-4-5. Obviously, like we mentioned, Jack just pipped by Rich Team Dynasty Island 1-6-4-9, 1-6-3-2. So must be agonising. Must be agonising. I'd hate to. I'd rather lose like I did against you, Stocks, than that. Like,
I genuinely think, Jack, that you should have a look to see if there is some sort of stat correction in the Fantrax website somewhere, because I am 100% sure you were winning by 0.15 or something. And I mean, it's not that you can't appeal it or anything. That's what it is. But
no one can navigate Fantrax's website that well. So.
And the last two results were Team Langley 1-4-3, lost to How to Dougie 1-5-9, and the highest score of the week, Tom, who's not had the best of times, scored 195. He beat Ollie Hodgkinson's 131. So Tom with the highest score of the week, 195 for Tom. And like I say, he's not had the best of times in the league, has he? But that's a bright spark for him.
But he's sneaky in the standings, Tom. Like when you think you've seen the back of him because he's taken a few hidings. I think he's mid-table or sneaking around bottom of the playoffs.
Good.
Yeah, I'm just looking now. He's got back to 4-4. I'm sure it was he 1-4. I would just imagine that he won his last three.
He did start terribly. I think actually the win against me might have been the catalyst.
You're so generous, Stocks. So generous.
No, I mean, I like to keep my boys. Well, I say that, and that's not true. I wanted to beat Jord so bad.
Yeah, so obviously at the top, Jack still stays at top. Obviously suffered his first loss, 7-1. Then even though I've got two losses, I'm still second, 6-2. One win behind me now. Stocks 5-3. And like I said, you've got Dynasty and Rich on 5-3, and Tom on fifth place on 4-4. Both have won the last three, so they're playing well at the right time. So they could sneak in. Like I've never played this like with Fantrax before, so it's good to know how many teams make the playoffs with this. Is it 4? Or is it just the top 2?
It was 4 last year.
Yeah, it was 4.
So teams still fighting for that thing, and obviously How to Dougie's 4-4, Ash is still 4-4, Team Langley 4-4, Ollie Hodgkinson's 3-5, Shane 3-5, Murph with that win moved up to 2-6, and Team Connor's 1-7. So if it is the top 4, it is quite close for the fourth spot. You know, there's like only a couple of wins in it, so it's apart from like I don't know if you're listening. Apologies, Connor. Apart from Connor, people have still got a chance, I think, to get into the top 4. Sorry, Connor. Sorry.
No, I think he's far too busy with True North Fantasy right now to be listening to this. But I think there's so many teams that could push for that playoff right now, and it only takes a loss here or there, and you could fall really quickly out of contention. I don't even know how many weeks of the season Fantrax uses for its fact. Like, how far off the playoffs are we? I feel like we could be screaming towards the playoffs without even knowing it. It could be. I don't know.
I'm not sure. This is the first year I've played it on the college football fantasy Fantrax, so I'm hoping you two can let me know. Yeah. I know, obviously, the two finalists here as well, so next to the two finals.
It looks like week 12 is the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
So I've got a few more weeks.
So that's 4 weeks. Crikey, that's 30% of the games. We're nowhere near. It's I tell you, Jack, have you ever played college fantasy on Yahoo?
No, never.
Okay. It's a bajillion times better than Fantrax is, but for some reason they're just not doing it anymore, which is a real shame. But hopefully, fingers crossed, Sleeper can pull their finger out and do a college one there, because that would be great considering everything else is run on Sleeper. Listen, boys, any final thoughts on week 8 heading into week 9 on the college football landscape as it lays, or do you think we've covered everything and it's time to hit the tape?
I'm not sure. Like, obviously, I'm not sure what Jack thinks, but I'm just loving this year. It's just like I don't. Obviously, when me and you spoke Stocks, we were saying we probably followed college football properly roughly about the same time for about 2 or 3 years now, and obviously it's normally the same people, and obviously Alabama is still there, but I don't remember it being this crazy. You know, like people getting beat each week and stuff. I know you do get the shocks, but it just seems to be so many close games, and like it's just been really fun to watch this year. Really, to be honest, obviously it probably helps with having crowds back as well. But it's been. I've just loved every minute of it. Every Saturday, just sitting down, even if I missed the first game, the half 8 games. All the TV games have been so good for the British, for us guys anyway over here. Because obviously we have limited teams we can watch games.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You know, it's not normal service resumed now at this part of the season because it is still bananas and crazy, and as we love it. But the playoff picture is becoming clearer now, and it is the same sort of teams who are in there. When a couple of weeks ago we would have thought there's going to be people in there that haven't been there for years or have never been there. So, Jack, yeah, I think Jord's completely right on that, isn't he? This season is as good as any that I remember.
Absolutely. Seeing Iowa and Penn State up there was great for the Big Ten, and great, particularly Iowa. They've always been a good, strong team, but to be ranked at number 2 and then cannon out the way they did was a disappointment. But that's exactly what we love to see, like big upset games, seeing some great play from all aspects of the field across college football. You've got you've got fun at every turn, and I think, like Jord said, we've been treated well to the games that are on British TV this year. Certainly better than the last couple of years, in my opinion. We've had some good picks.
We certainly have. Boys, I would just like to say thank you ever so much for coming on. We had Ash had Jake on at the start of the season, and you guys are now on, and we are truly blessed. I know I speak on behalf of everyone at 5 Yard, but for me personally, coming over to the college side, I'm truly blessed to have such a wonderful writing squad behind me. You guys are smashing it week in and week out, and now you're on the pod. It's becoming its own little family here, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. So thank you so much for your efforts, lads. Appreciate it. And Jack, thanks for coming on. Thanks for the first pod, mate. It's been good. I can assume you will come back. I haven't destroyed your podcasting dreams.
Oh, I've loved it. I'll definitely be back if I was good enough.
Absolutely. You will definitely be back. Jord, you may have capped out now as to your appearances for the Pac-12 this season. The off-season may await. No, I'm joking. Obviously, there's always room for you too, mate. Thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it. Obviously, there might not be much Pac-12 talk down the back end of the road, but I'm sure I can take on. I can support Cincinnati for a bit and take on the role of Cooper 5.
I mean, listen, Civil War, last game of the season. That's Pac-12, and that's right at the end of the season. So the window is always open for Pac-12 love. Unfortunately, Ash will be back next week, so that window will be slammed fairly shut until you are back, Jord. Jack, appreciate you coming on. Jord, you as always, my friend. But Rush Nation, that leaves me one final thing to say, and that is Saturdays are for rushing too.